walking into the house and encountering beautiful roasted eggplants covered with garlic and walnut sauce, stewed with chmeli suneli, a Georgian spice blend made up of coriander seed, fenugreek, summer savory, mint, and marigold, covered with heaps and heaps of parsley, cilantro, and pomegranate, creating the most prolific of aromas. Coming home after school and eating dinner at 4 p.m. was ritual in my home growing up. My fierce Georgian-Russian mother taking a 2-hour break from running her small and seemingly 24/7 interior design business with her big curly hair and her high heels, wearing leopard print, certainly her favorite color, and cooking up a storm while watching soap operas to learn English. Me, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, then getting up to taste a little bit of this, a mouthful of that. My love for food came through osmosis. Food is how my mother loved us best. And there's no question that even though my journey included an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering, an attempt at medical school, then a PhD in biomedical engineering, all while writing fiction and poetry and painting and taking photos, I always kept the art and love of food close. Whether experimenting with the creation of color-changing pasta in my college dorm room, or hosting 40-person dinners with my best friend in our tiny Montreal apartment, food was center stage as my greatest passion always. What luck did I have to find my background in engineering and technology begin to combine with my interests in art and design, and ultimately with my passions for food. Creating art installations around the globe, whether a machine that poured drinks based on the emotions of a place, or deconstructing beverage in a way that allowed us to sip and pour edible clouds, to the building of large-scale multi-sensorial projection map dining experiences and opening up interactive museums of ice cream across the United States. The most common thread through all of this work that fascinated me the most was the ability for food and food experience to transform. The ways that we could be changed as individuals through our interactions with the things we eat. Our original social media was made up of recipes that contained our histories, our stories, even our secrets. Food, truly the most fundamental part of life. Food, the platform that everyone understands, regardless of race, religion, geography, or economy. Food is our greatest tool for communication and creation. Feeding one another is an act of creation second only to conception. The food we share forms the building blocks that become our hair, our skin, our nails, the energy we need to drive through the day. Watching loved ones eat a meal we prepared is watching us create their future. Often food is relegated to the realm of nutrition. Unequivocally important as understanding how macro and micronutrients come together to function in our bodies allows us to be physiologically balanced and healthy. However, the ways these components engage with our metabolism extends far beyond the ideas of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Food is made up of many functional and bioactive compounds, some of which, over the last decade, have been discovered to augment the ways our genetic information and our genetic code is interpreted. These compounds have the ability to interact with the machinery that transcribes our blueprint DNA, thereby turning genes off and on. These short-term genetic transitions behave very much in the same way as longer-term transitions. We may recognize that though all the cells of our bodies contain identical DNA, they're able to function quite differently and differentiate themselves from one another due to differences in genetic interpretation. Like muscle cells having the ability to contract, or neurons being able to send electrical signals throughout our bodies, or the rods and cones of our eyes sensing light. Though our genetics are predetermined, their interpretation can be varied over the course of our lifetime through physiological, chemical, and emotional experiences. This experiential imprint, called the epigenome, is written as a layer of interpretive code over the existing biological blueprint of DNA. Changes in the epigenome, in essence, open and close the nearly 3 meters of DNA coiled up in every human cell, making specific genes available or unavailable for transcription. This is the biological way in which food and food experience transforms us as individuals, and accumulating evidence demonstrates that these transformations are passed on to our future generations. This is a molecular memory of all the things we eat and experience, and has become the basis of a movement in epigenetic eating, choosing foods for their genetic implications rather than purely for their nutritional implications. Inevitably, this food transformation journey of us as individuals leads one to ask what foods might be best and where they come from, and of course, how are they produced? In seeking answers to these questions, the consumption of food begins to take on a very different meaning. When we look outward and we begin to open to further inquiry, when we begin to connect the dots and encounter information regarding the impact of food on the world at large, we find that the production of food is creating an environmental form of memory. Through the accumulation of CO2 in the atmosphere, or the attrition of carbon from soil, and the destruction of old-growth rainforests around the globe. When we learn agricultural accounts for 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions, when we learn that industrial wheat is harvested using chemical herbicides that contaminate our groundwater, when we learn that our livestock takes up nearly 80% of all agricultural land and is responsible for much of our environmental degradation, we begin to understand how much the decisions we make are not only fundamentally changing us as individuals, they are also changing the world at large and significantly accelerating the impact of global climate change. Even as we're witnessing the movement toward flexitarian diets and plant-based diets, and witnessing the transformation of agriculture practices to more regenerative methodologies, and witnessing consumers becoming more and more aware of their food footprints on Earth, the actions we are taking are seemingly not aggressive enough, and the cycle of change is coming full circle. With increases in global temperatures, acidification of ocean chemistries, increasing rates of desertification, ecosystems are changing, and with that, plants and animals are being forced to adapt quickly. At these time scales, natural evolution does not function sufficiently. It is not fast enough, and we are beginning to witness the first clear examples of epigenetic adaptive change. In the same ways that our food and our food experience is transforming us epigenetically, the pressure our food system is putting on the environment is transforming plants and animals epigenetically. Fortunately, many of these epigenetic transformations are giving organisms the plasticity to rapidly adapt to change in the environment. Like the 3-spined stickleback fish demonstrating adaptation to changes in Baltic Sea ocean salinity, or thermal tolerances building up in coral populations, or forest trees navigating droughts that they've never seen before, we are witnessing more and more examples of nature's ability to epigenetically respond and buffer the initial impacts of global climate change. However, these buffers are not infinite, and with 1 million species on the verge of extinction, these buffers are reaching their capacities. Our food decisions are transforming not only the course of our lives at an epigenetic level, they're also transforming all living organisms on Earth. Food is an interface that intrinsically links biology, the environment, and our future. And now is a time for action. As humans, we are responsible for climate change and have the responsibility to view our lives as biological stewards of the Earth and do everything we can to mitigate its impact. We have the opportunity to disrupt this cycle through food. And it is up to us as individuals and as consumers to demand better food production practices that minimize our food footprints. The only way to do this is to arm ourselves with information. Let us ask more questions. Let us demand that food products not only be labeled with nutritional information, but also be labeled with ecological impact information. Let us recognize that food gives us the ability to create and the ability to destroy. Let us consider the epigenetic legacy, the molecular memories we will be leaving behind in our children and all the living things on Earth. Let us take a moment before each and every bite and consider the high stakes of how the foods we consume will biologically transform us, the world around us, and the future. Thank you.